Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. I am a knitter, a sewist, gardener, mini homesteader-y person-y thing. Welcome to my channel. This is where I share everything to do with living a handmade, homegrown and slow life. It's so great to have you guys here today. I have got a really exciting video for you. So today's video is all in aid of it's a whole mix of things really. It's Sustainable September, Secondhand September, and Sew Yourself Sustainable September. So Secondhand September is a campaign started by Oxfam which encourages people to buy secondhand clothing in September. To try and encourage more people to buy secondhand rather than buying new. And then you also have Sew Yourself Sustainable, which is a campaign started by the New Craft House, who are a designer Deadstock fabric stockist, and they teach sewing and they do all this amazing stuff in their studio in London. And in September they encourage you to make a sustainable sewing pledge to try and make your sewing more sustainable. And then there's also just #Sustainable September, which is just encouraging more sustainability throughout September. I think a lot of this is a kind of knock-on effect to like hit back against, you know, September's often one of the biggest times where people go shopping for clothes, to try and encourage more sustainable habits. So I thought that it would be really fun to do a video on how you can make clothes more sustainably, because a lot of us make our clothes to be more sustainable. I certainly started that way. That was what drew me to making my own clothes, was that I wanted to find a more sustainable way to create a wardrobe that felt very unique and personal to me. And as somebody who has always had quite a sort of like non-standard body shape in terms of like my body's changed a lot because I am chronically ill, but also I've always had quite a large bust, I've always had curves, and so it's never been that easy, you know, even when I was younger, to sort of find things that fit my body right. And so buying secondhand made that even harder. And so I was sort of drawn to making my own clothes as a way of being more sustainable and ethical, knowing who made my clothes, what they were made out of, and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I just thought it would be really nice to do a little video. It's the very last day of September today, so I'm just getting it in time to talk about how we can all make our clothes more sustainably. Because really, when we learn to make our own clothes, I feel like we learn to appreciate how clothes are made as well. So I feel like that's a really great part of learning to make your own clothes. You guys will know, I know most of you sew or knit or crochet, that when you've put loads of time and work and effort into something and you've learned about garment construction, it makes you appreciate how clothes are made so much more, because the majority of our clothes that we have on this planet, they are actually still made by hand by people in factories, people who aren't necessarily treated correctly, who are exploited. The resources that are used to make all of these clothes are, you know, exploiting our planet. And yeah, I heard a statistic recently, actually. I went to a live recording of the podcast Spill the Sustainability, and they were saying that there's now enough clothes on the planet to clothe the next 6 generations of people on this planet. That's how many clothes are produced, like ridiculous amounts of clothes. So yeah, I really think that this is a video that is needed, and I'm very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about how crafting and making your own clothes can help you to live more sustainably. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Okay, so the very first thing I'm gonna say is wear your makes. That is the most sustainable thing you can do, is wear the things that you've already made, that you already have in your wardrobe. If you're today wanting, you know, you're thinking, actually, you know what? I want to be more sustainable. I want to make my wardrobe a more sustainable place where it's benefiting the planet and benefiting people on the planet. Just wear what you've already got. Even if it's not me made, wear what you've already got and wear it, you know, to death until it's, you know, I don't know, falling apart, got holes in it, etc. So that is the most sustainable thing that you can do. My number one tip is just wear what you've already made. It is so enticing to like make more stuff. I find it myself as well that I've really tried to slow down and be more considered with my making in the last sort of year, because when I first started sewing, it's just so exciting. Just buy all the fabric, buy all of the yarn for knitting, and you just want to go, 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 go. And I've been trying to like really calm it down. I think for me as well, it was quite difficult because when I became unwell, my body changed so much that none of my clothes fit, and I was very, very unwell. I could barely leave the house, so I didn't really have any clothes that worked for me. I just had like a few bits here and there that I would buy, but my wardrobe was a bit miserable. So when I started making clothes, I really felt like I came back to myself, because clothes has always been a way that I've expressed myself, expressed how I feel, expressed who I am, and so when I started making clothes, it was a really great opportunity to sort of find that part of myself again. And so I did make a lot of stuff, but I'm now in a position where I'm like, actually, I've got a lot of things in my wardrobe that fit, that I love, that make me feel good about myself, and yeah, I just want to wear those. I made this dress last year, it got a lot of wear last year, it's already had a lot of wear this year, so yeah, I'm very much trying to wear what I've already made as much as possible. And so, yeah, with that in mind, this is sort of like an add-on rather than an extra one. The next thing would be wear what you've made, but also make, do and mend. So that traditional wartime adage, which was all about making do with what you have and mending what you have. So in this society now, unfortunately, because clothes are such a easy commodity to come by, they're produced at such a ridiculous rate, it's very tempting when, you know, you get a hole in something, people just throw it away, partly because it's so easy to replace and often sadly cheaper to replace, but also because people have actually lost the skills to know how to mend these things. So my husband brought down a cashmere jumper the other day that he has had since he was, I think, like 15. We've been sorting through our drawers and things because we're moving house soon, and like selling some things, donating some things, and he brought it down and he was like, this is a really lovely cashmere jumper, but it's got a hole in it and I don't know how to fix it. So I've had a little look on YouTube, and there are so many tutorials on how to mend like knitted jumpers, how to like, especially like this really finely knit on a machine. It's not going to be particularly easy, but it's a beautiful cashmere jumper that has a tiny hole in it. Fix the hole, it can be worn again. And so that is like one of the biggest things, is not only learning how to make your own clothes, but also learning how to fix your clothes. That is one of the most sustainable things that you can do. So I'm trying really hard to learn how to darn knitwear. I really enjoy things like visible mending. There's a lot of books about visible mending, and there's also a lot of books about invisible mending. YouTube is my best friend for anything. Anything I need to learn, I look on YouTube first, because there is nearly always a video or like 100 videos of what you need to do. So yeah, my first tip is to make, do and mend. Wear what you already have and learn how to look after it and learn how to mend it. Okay, my next tip is to reuse fabric. So I've been trying to do this a lot more recently. You may have seen in my last video, I did my autumn makes plans. I showed a curtain that I thrifted from the charity shop, which has got like meters of beautiful brushed cotton fabric, which is going to be great for a dress. Earlier this year, I made a dress from some curtains from the charity shop. I have a whole vlog on that, so I will link that below. I've made a dress from a bed sheet before. I've got a few bed sheets in my stash that I've thrifted or been given by family members that I need to make like pajamas or something. I'm needing some new pajamas, so I'm going to use them for that. Bed sheets, tablecloths, curtains, all of those things are your best friend, as long as they can be washed easily in the washing machine. So I try not to buy fabrics that can't be washed, because unless it's a jacket or a coat or something, that's a bit of a pain. So yeah, I have ordered from Etsy, I have ordered from eBay. I often go into the charity shops in Chipping Norton and in Stow-on-the-Wold, which is close to where I live, because they always have the best kind of stuff. But I also often go into charity shops when I'm just like on holiday in a new place, and it's just nice to see what another town has available. But yeah, I would really highly recommend that you have a go at reusing fabrics rather than buying new fabrics. fabrics, because that's just such an easy way to be sustainable. It's also an easy way to buy cheaply. You know, if you're new to sewing or you want to try a new pattern that you've not tried before and you don't want to ruin a lovely, beautiful, expensive piece of fabric, get secondhand fabric. That's the way to go. And so I would really, really recommend that you try that. You can also as well buy old clothes from the charity shop and reuse those fabrics. So especially if the clothes are much bigger size than you are, I often find it's quite easy to get like a big dress or something. You can often rip the seams and lay all the fabric out and cut something new. I've been thinking recently about having a go at making a tweed jacket, but I don't particularly want to spend all the money on the tweed and then mess it up. So I think one great thing to do would be to go and look for a tweed jacket, maybe a tweed jacket and skirt at the charity shop, which I've seen quite a few times, especially like a men's jacket that's going to be quite a lot longer and quite a lot larger than I need. And the idea would be to open up the seams, like undo all the fabric and just have a good look at what I've got there and see what I can make out of it. I've done this before with trousers and dungarees where I've taken the top off and put a waistband around it. So yeah, looking for ways to find fabric that doesn't necessarily mean you need to buy fabric. And it's the same for knitting as well. I know quite a few people who have actually unraveled store-bought jumpers. I'm not quite brave enough for that yet, although maybe I will have a go soon looking at a charity shop. But if you have knitted items that perhaps you made at the beginning of your journey, I've got a few that are sentimental that I've kept because they're from like my first few things that I've made. But there's quite a few things that haven't quite gone right. That happens quite often. I mean, there's a cardigan that I made last year that just isn't the right size at all. It's just far too big. And I took the sleeves off, took it in, like tried to make it work. It doesn't work. So I think, to be honest, it will need to be unraveled. I unraveled a couple of projects a few years ago as well, so that I can reuse the yarn, so that I'm not always having to buy new yarn and then leaving these knitted garments in my drawers and not being worn. And so you guys might have the same thing where, you know, you've made things that actually you just haven't got round to wearing, or perhaps the fit wasn't quite right. I know it can be quite painful. I often put these things away in a drawer for like 6 months to a year because it's so painful when you finish to unravel. But I would really, really encourage you to have a go at unraveling these things, because it's not too difficult once you get started, and then you can repurpose the yarn for something else. And if some of the yarn is damaged or it's not quite right, then maybe try making something smaller, maybe try making something sleeveless so that you don't have to use the damaged yarn. This was something that was done a lot during the war, is that people would unravel jumpers, they would keep the yarn that was good and worth using, and they would knit something else completely differently. And that leads me on very nicely to the sponsor of today's video. Okay, so today's video sponsor is this beautiful, lovely pink and purple electric yarn winder from Kado. I've spoken about this before. They very kindly sponsored this video. It is a really great tool. I have been winding yarn for quite a few years now, and as I say, a few years ago I actually unraveled quite a few of my early makes because I wanted to repurpose the yarn. It's really nice, good quality yarn. I wasn't wearing the makes. I wish I had had this tool. It would have made life so much easier. It is so easy to use, and what I love about it is that it's actually very sturdy. So I often have this problem with my other yarn winder, which is a hand wound one, is that it doesn't sit like on the table very well. It's not particularly solid, but this is very solid. It's got really good feet on it, which I think is really helpful. I was actually really impressed with this because I really wasn't sure what to expect using an electric yarn winder. But it made the job so easy. It meant that I could actually do it on my own. I didn't need my husband to help me, which I've needed every other time because I'm like hands all over here. Like, you need like 4 pairs of hands, whereas with this you just simply press the button and you just press go. And so yeah, I really like this product, and I really recommend it. If you're thinking, you know what, I've got some jumpers I've not worn, or I've been to the charity shop and I found a shop bought jumper and I quite fancy having a go at unwinding that yarn and reusing it to make something, I would really suggest getting yourself one of these. I think having these tools in your craft supply just makes crafting so much better and so much easier. It makes it so much easier to be more sustainable with your crafting as well. I currently have a 30% discount code for these, so if you look in the description bar below, you can click my link and use the code MUNBIN, which will get you 30% off, and yeah, highly recommend you have a go with this. My fourth tip is to use Deadstock fabrics and charity shop yarns. So if, like me, you want to sew clothes and you want to knit/crochet garments, garments, there are really great ways to buy yarn and fabric that are going to be a little bit better. So as suggested in the previous one, to reuse fabric that's already around. But if you are wanting to buy, you know, newer fabric, one of the best ways you can do that is actually by buying from a Deadstock shop. Somebody like New Craft House, Rainbow Fabrics Kilburn, I'm trying to think of any others. There's a few that sell Deadstock fabrics. If you Google Deadstock fabric shop, you'll find quite a few. Basically, a Deadstock fabric is something that has been commissioned for a big high street shop or a designer brand, and they have made their clothes out of it, and then they've not needed the rest of it. There might be 15 meters, 30 meters, I mean, some people have had 100 meters of fabric left that would have otherwise gone to landfill, and a lot of Deadstock fabric shops have been saving these fabrics from going to landfill and selling them on to people like you and I. So this is a really, really great way of getting yourself some sustainable fabric. I do buy new fabrics, I buy thrifted fabrics, I like to buy a whole mix of different things, but I try my best to buy the most sustainable option, and I do think that when it comes to new, Deadstock is a really, really good way to go. And when it comes to yarn, this is a little bit harder to do because you don't really get like Deadstock yarns quite as much. But one thing I would recommend is having a look in the charity shops, because I've been surprised how many times I've gone in and found a basket with, you know, 5 or 6 balls of the same yarn. And if you're wanting to make something that's enough for, perhaps, you know, if it's quite a small garment or it's for a child or something, that works really well. I am yet to find a bag like filled with yarn, but you never know, because I know other people who have found that in charity shops. It's really, really worth looking out for that. But I would also say as well, when it comes to yarn, is it's really worth looking out for stash sales. A lot of people on Instagram will buy a whole bunch of yarn and then they won't use it, or they'll buy a whole bunch of yarn and they won't need to use all of it, and they will sell it on. And you get the same thing with fabrics as well. So you can buy a new fabric from somebody, but actually it sort of would have gone to waste anyway because they're not using it. It's already been cut as like a 3 meter or a 2 meter or something along those lines. So yeah, I really recommend that you have a look at stash sales online and Deadstock fabric stockists. My next tip works both for sewing and for knitting/crochet, and that is using natural fibres. So if you are wanting to make your own clothes, one of the best things you can do is choose natural fibres, because that will not leave too much of a trace on our planet. So when these clothes have been worn lots and lots and lots and mended lots and lots and lots, and you've cut them up to make something else with them when you're done with them, and they're really, that fabric is just, you know, it's done with, it's time for it to go. You want to be buying natural fibres because it will break down in the earth and it will not leave microplastics, it will not leave harmful chemicals. So for example, things like linen, cotton, wool, alpaca, those kind of fibres are going to be your best options, and you can find those in both yarn and in fabric for making clothes. So I have tried my hardest more recently to be buying very natural fibre fabrics and natural fibre yarns. I try not to buy any acrylic at all. It's quite difficult with certain things like friends and family who want things made for their children, who are not wanting wool because they're worried about it, although I am trying to encourage more and more people to use it. But yeah, when it comes to my fabrics, I'm trying really hard. Another one as well, viscose, tencel, things like that, which are made from like tree pulp. And also you're finding there's a few yarns like that as well. Now, obviously you get bamboo yarn, but I saw somebody recently has made a yarn from roses, from like rose stems with the same kind of process. So there's so many options when it comes to natural fibres. And this is just going to be so much better for the planet when you are done with this garment and when whoever you've passed it on to is done with this garment. So natural fibres is a really great way when you're buying new yarn and new fabric to think about the planet. Okay, my next tip is to do a seasonal wardrobe assessment. I talked about this last time in my last video where I was sharing like my plans for the autumn. I like to do a seasonal assessment where I look at my wardrobe, I look at everything I've already made and that I've already got, and I think what would be useful. I often pull together Pinterest boards of like, you know, ideas for clothes, ideas for styling and that kind of stuff, and so I can get a good idea of what it is that I want, how I want to look in this season, what I feel my wardrobe needs. Now, I'm not saying you can't buy new clothes. This year I have bought a few new pieces. I also accept that bodies change size, styles change. That's something that's happened to me quite a lot actually in the last year, is that my style has started to change quite a lot. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's turning 30. I just feel like my style has really changed. And so there are certain things that I'm struggling a little bit with in my wardrobe. However, what I've done is I've gone and I've had a look on Pinterest and I've been like, I really like the way that is styled. So perhaps if I wore it in a slightly different way with a slightly different boot or, you know, a different coat or something, that would actually work for me. And so I do this kind of seasonal assessment like I did this year where I went, I'm not sure I want to wear that dress in the same way I wore it last year, but I would really like it if I could wear it with a blazer and some boots, and I don't have those in my wardrobe. So I then went on Vinted and I bought some secondhand, and I just think that that's a really great thing to do rather than rushing out and buying a whole new wardrobe or buying a whole load of new fabrics and new yarns to make things with. Look at what you already have. Look at where the gaps are. Think about how you're going to style some outfits. Maybe even it would be fun for you to actually style some outfits, pull things out, lay them out on the bed, try them with different things. And then you might go, you know what would be really helpful? A beige cardigan. That would be really helpful this season. So that's what I'm going to invest my money in. I'm going to go and buy some really good quality yarn to make a beige cardigan. I think this is a really important thing to do because as makers, it's so tempting, and I do this all the time myself. I get really excited by a pattern or, you know, like something that I see, like somebody's made a sewing pattern or a knitting pattern, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need that. And, you know, go out and buy it in this fantastic color like that I'm drawn to. And then I don't end up wearing it because it doesn't go with anything else in my wardrobe. So I now try really hard to look at my wardrobe, look at what I already have, look at what I've already made, and think, actually, what would be the most useful thing to make and bring into this? So I talked about this in my last video, in my autumn makes video. I talked about how I feel like I could do with some jackets and I could do with some long sleeve dresses, because last year I was really cold. I'd made quite a few lovely short sleeve dresses, but by the time we got to November, I was freezing cold, even with a big thick jumper or cardigan on. I also as well looked at my wardrobe and thought, actually, I could really do with 1 or 2 jumpers to add to wear over the top of these dresses that I'd already made. So it helps me to wear what I have already got and that I've already made, which is obviously point number 1. But it also means that purchases I make are much more considered, and it also means that those purchases will hopefully be worn a lot. Okay, my final tip is to make things from your scraps or sell them. So basically, I think that it's really good to keep scraps if you're somebody who wants to make something like, say, a patchwork quilt, or you enjoy making things like scrunchies, you enjoy small sewing projects. However, if you're somebody that is going to collect up all these scraps and just leave them in a bag and not do anything with them, that's obviously not going to be any use at all. So recently I sold a bunch of my stuff. I had like 1.5 meters of this or 1 meter of that left over from making something that I'd just been saving and saving and saving, and I just thought, actually, I'm going to pop it on my Instagram. I'm going to see if anybody wants it. And I managed to sell these things, and that was really, really helpful. It got me a little bit of extra cash so I could buy my secondhand jacket off Vinted. And yeah, it was a really great thing to do. So I really recommend that you look at selling, you know, if you've got a couple of balls of yarn that you're not using, somebody else might use those for a hat or a mitten, or like some mittens or some socks or something along those lines. So make sure you check out what you've got. Don't just leave things sort of like lounging in your stash permanently. pop them up on your Instagram, pop them up on Depop or eBay, and see if you can sell those few bits so that somebody else can make something with them, because really they're just going to be wasted in your stash. If, however, you want to have a go at sewing something with your leftover fabrics or knitting something, have a little look at there are some really great projects online. So you can have a look at Janelle, for example, from Rosie Apparel. She's one of my favorites. She has tons of scrappy fabric videos, from scrunchies to like peg bags to like gifting. There's all sorts of different things that you could try. And the same with yarn. There are so many great little projects, especially for babies and children. If you have any babies and children in your life, you can make lots of great little projects. Recently I had one ball left and I managed to make a pair of little booties for a friend's baby. So there's so many things, so many ideas. Get on Ravelry, get on Pinterest, get on Instagram, and see what you can make with your scraps. Either sell them or use them. Don't just leave them hanging out in your stash. Okay, so that is the end of this video. I hope you guys found it really helpful. Remember that making your own clothes can be a really sustainable option, but it's definitely not just like a cover-all. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's it, like you make clothes, therefore you're sustainable. It's really important that we think about what we're making, what we're using to make our clothes with, and how that then affects the planet when you're done with those clothes. There's lots of different things that you can think about and ways that you can make a difference with your crafting and with your making. So yeah, I hope this has inspired you guys to have a little think about those things. I hope you guys have really enjoyed these tips. I would love to hear any tips from you. If you have any sort of sustainability, you know, sewing or knitting or crochet, crafting tips, please do leave them in the comments below. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you next time. Bye.